clap. How will I... Sorry, it's a really big clap.
It's extraordinary.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very special discussion about Final Cut, the evolution of horror card game. I'm joined by the brains, the real talent behind this game, Alex Ayling. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. And Mike Lee Graham. Hello.
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 Hey.
Sorry, I sounded more excited by seeing Mike there.
That's okay.
I was equally excited to see you both. Suddenly felt my energy change.
It's been a long development process.
It has been a long development process. So this is what we're going to talk about. It feels like it's taken a long time to get to this point. I was having a look back through our messages, Alex, and I sent you a WhatsApp in 2020, I think,
goodness.
right? Being like, I'd really like to develop a game based on the podcast. And you reacted in exactly the way I wanted you to, which was like, oh, okay, I'll start thinking of ideas immediately. And you were so on it, right? Tell me a little bit about that process of like, you know, when that idea first came from me and sort of how you developed it from there.
Yeah, so I guess for a while I'd been sort of tinkering with the idea of designing a game anyway. Like I'd had it in the back of my mind. It was something that I'd wanted to do. And I guess all it took was that little seed, that little spark from you. Because like as a creative, when I'm being creative, as a creative, I'm not like you. I hate a blank sheet of paper, right? That's the thing I hate most in the world. But if you say to me, you can only write on half the page, you can only use 2 colors, and you've got 5 minutes, then I'm like, great, okay, go, let's do this thing. And so I need that kind of seed of inspiration, which I got from you, and then immediately, like I couldn't not think about it. Like it was that journey that I suddenly went on and was like, oh, okay, right. It's got to be evolution of horror. Okay, so it's got to be about subgenres. We've got to get the subgenres in there somehow. And it's also about evolution of horror. So it's got to have some kind of like recognition of the time and moving through. And so I guess like when you're, not to leap into it, but I guess when you're designing a game, there's sort of 2 ways you can go about it, which is either you start thematically or you start mechanically. So you either start with a theme and then build your mechanics around it, or you might have like a version of a game which is just like bits of squares and circles and you move them around in an abstract way and then you add the theme on afterwards. And so with this, it was very much theme first. It was like, okay, so it's about horror movies, it's about subgenres. I want to make it fun. It should be a game that you could whip out in the pub or after you've been to see a movie. Like all of these things were in my head at the beginning before I was then sort of like then almost setting myself the brief of like what game could exist within those creative boundaries.
Yeah, I remember us saying we didn't want to make it, obviously it's a horror game, but we didn't make it about horror trivia, right? Like, I think that was quite important. I felt that was quite important, that you didn't have to be a horror expert to be able to play this game, right? It's more, it's your, what would you liken it to in terms of the style of play? It's almost like a kind of Uno style game, I guess.
Yeah,
like,
so, it's a card game. We haven't said that.
Yeah.
So, and again, like it comes in this little box, which you can put in your bag, or if you've got a big pocket, you can put it in your pocket and bring
cargo
to the
pants.
Yeah, exactly. They're coming back just for this. So you can bring it around with you. And I think, you know, the thing you're talking about is accessibility. And I really wanted to make this accessible. Like I obviously wanted it to appeal to horror fans and for those people to get the most out of it. But I also wanted them to use it as a recruitment tool to get people into horror or to like have a conversation about horror in a fun way. So, you know, I've played this with my daughter and my mum this last weekend. So it's multi-generational, neither of whom are into horror films.
Perfect.
And so it works. I want it to work as a game as well as it being just a fun horror experience.
I love this. And so it was, I swear it was only a few weeks, maybe a few months later when you were like, I've got this game. And we actually did a bit of test playing because you kind of created this sort of prototype, right?
Yeah.
You've actually still got, have you still got your prototype?
Got the prototype. So
Let's
I've
have
got
a little look.
The first ever prototype.
Incredible.
So this was, I don't know, you might not be able to pick that up on the camera, but these are like revision, like note cards, like you would get, like, or if you were doing speaking or something, like speaking note cards.
Incredible.
And they're lined, and I got like 8 different colors of Sharpie to write along the bottom, and I started to get this sense of set collection. Like that became the core mechanic of this game is set collection. You need to collect a set of 4 cards to create a movie. And in your movie, you've got to have a victim, a killer, a setting, and an item. And so I knew I wanted that. And I knew that I wanted all of those different things to have different subgenres. So then it became a bit of a maths puzzle around like how many of each thing do I need to have? How many need to overlap? So when you get the game, you'll be able to see that there are no different movie cards that have the same combination of subgenres on them. So if this item is folk horror and a slasher, there's no victim card that's folk and slasher. There's no killer and no setting.
So, for example, we've got this card, chainsaw, an item, a chainsaw that belongs in folk horror and slasher.
Yeah.
So ideally, you want to match that with other cards that have one
either
of those
folk
two.
or slasher. But what if you had cards that were also both of these? That would make it easier for you to collect those things. And so I wanted to make it a bit more challenging.
Love that.
So I had that set collection mechanic, and then I was like, there's got to be more to it than that, because otherwise it could just be a card game. It could just be with a standard deck of cards. There's got to be something else. And so that's where the kind of Uno, I guess, it's a bit of take that mechanic. It's a bit of, playing a card. So we have wild cards, which are the non-movie cards, and they allow a bit of interaction between the players. Because the other thing that I find a little bit frustrating when I'm playing games is when you have a game and it's effectively like 4 games of solitaire that are all happening simultaneously, and there's not enough interaction between you. Everyone's doing their own thing, which sometimes is fine if you want like a chilled experience. But I wanted a little bit of take that, how's that kind of vibes as well.
And also, I think what's really nice that you thought of as well is that it isn't just a case of whoever completes their set first wins, game over, everyone else loses kind of thing. Like it's a point system, right? So actually, even if you complete your set and the game ends after that round, that complete set might not score as many points as other people who might have a less complete set but with more matching subgenres and that kind of thing.
And that's another thing built on my experience of playing games where you can be halfway through a game, and this is worse for longer games, but you can be like 40 minutes into a game and know you've got another 40 minutes, an hour to go, and you know you're going to lose because someone's like so far ahead. I hate that. I love it when something can flip on the final turn. That kind of thing. Like sometimes people will run away with it, but there's always an opportunity. And because this is quite a casual game as well, I wanted it to feel like you could win on your first time playing. You didn't have to have a huge amount of skill. Like there's enough luck, but there's enough strategy that you can think about what you're doing as well.
Love that. And so the game kind of, it sort of worked. I remember even in these early days of us playing it with these cards in the pub, it sort of worked, right?
And that was just you and me. And then so then you can see there's like pencil and different conditions for different cards and things like that. But then we sort of evolved to the next level, which is where I invested in a pack of blank cards.
Incredible.
Kept the same Sharpies. And then started to name some of the cards. And the other thing that I wanted to do with the wild cards in particular was to have the name of the card be thematic to what the action is doing. So there's a seance card, and that card, like, that means you pass cards around a circle. So imagine you're all in a seance, things like that. There's a dimensional shift, which basically puts you into another reality. So you discard all your cards and draw a whole load of new ones. So all of these things were clever. Thought through to give you that kind of thematic feeling of like it being you being in the movie. I mean, the biggest conversation we've had over the past 4 years, and the thing that we flip-flopped on so many times was like, are you in the movie?
Yes.
Why are you not in the movie? And so the original conceit was you're all playing as Hollywood studios and you've all got to create the next big movie. And that just felt a bit like too inside baseball. And then we flipped it completely the other way, which is like you're the final girl and you're trying to survive a movie. And then it became a bit like, how would you be interacting with each other in that? And how, are you all in separate movies? And how does that sort of didn't work either. And so we've sort of ended up out of the movie, but I guess like I don't know, everyone can have their own headcanon, right?
Yeah.
My headcanon is that you're like flicking through the endless stream of all the movies that have ever existed, and you're trying to like find the one that's right for you.
Yes.
That you want to watch in that moment.
Well, that's what's really nice about it too, right? Is that you end up with a combination of 4 cards at the end, and it's almost like a game of consequences or something, right? It's like, right, I've got my victim is a babysitter, the killer is a masked maniac, and the setting is the woods, and the weapon is a puzzle box, or the item is a puzzle box, and you come up with a potential story in your head as to what that movie is. And there must be, I don't know if you've done the math, but there must be like hundreds, if not thousands of combinations of all these different cards.
I like at one point again we talked about like we could go through every combination and figure out like and assign them a movie, and then it turned out there were like 10,000, so or something like that. I need to do the math again, but what I'm really excited about is when people start to play it, they can then send us their movie.
Yes.
And then their pitch, their log line for that movie. Or maybe it will line up completely perfectly with an existing horror movie. And, some of those ones sort of will, because all the slashers are, it's all based on tropes.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I can't remember, when did because obviously I think another huge part of this, right, Alex, is that we said these are going to rely on the design too.
Right.
Like,
so you can see this, like the gameplay is important.
Yeah.
But the reason why you're going to want to get the game out again and again is the way that it looks and the way that it makes you feel when you're playing it. And part of that is the gameplay, but the I think more important is like how the cards looked.
Yeah.
There was only one man we could go to, really, wasn't there?
Here he is. Mike, this was quite a big task. Like, obviously, we've worked together on loads of things, and you've designed all the art for the podcast and everything I've done related to the podcast. But I remember thinking, oh my God, this is quite a mammoth job. But I was like, Mike, would you be up for designing like 75 different illustrations for this card game? What was your kind of first reaction?
I got really excited about it when I came and did the first playtest, because I think you guys could have probably been forgiven for doing something just kind of like falling back on the name of the brand. And I see, not to kind of like shame other
cash in.
Let's throw some others under the buff.
But it could have been, like the podcast is a sort of like historical movie podcast. It could have been like a kind of a quiz.
It could have been like a Christmas stocking filler Christmas quiz with cards and questions, right? Yeah.
So I was really impressed and surprised as well, like really pleasantly surprised by the complexity of it. It's like very easy to pick up, but then there's like layers to it with the wild cards and the era cards. And it was a bit daunting. Because also I think the thing that gave me, I was always going to do it, but obviously I went home and there was a little bit of anxiety about like how am I going to make all the subgenres work, because that was such an important part of it as well. And that was a great kind of like interplay that we had about how best to make that work. And actually, Alex, you basically solved that straight out of the gate by just using different coloured Sharpies for it. And because I thought with the different movie cards, killer, setting, item, victim, maybe those would be the colour points.
Right.
But then, oh gosh, how do I make the subgenres work?
Yes.
So that was probably the thing that gave me the most pause. But I think that it was kind of easy in the end, compared to how difficult it could have been, because it was so well worked out by Alex, and the mechanics of it worked so well already that it was like spoke earlier about kind of like being afraid of like a blank page. It's like I didn't have one. It was great. It was so obvious which kind of route to take. I just wasn't sure if it would like really, really pan out. Because I was worried using lots of different colours would make it too colourful.
Yes.
But I just, swallowed like loads of like horror art and horror comics and things like that. And I tried to see, and also actually I started to kind of think about colourful horror films. Suspiria, The Color of Space. There's like, loads, obviously.
Yeah.
And actually, I kind of felt like it worked quite well.
Yeah.
I lent quite into using like very kind of like sort of like stark shadows with the artwork and things like that. And I think that helps ground it in horror. And then, I actually can't believe it works.
It works so well.
And when you lay them all down next to each other, there's a kind of tactile, like almost synesthesia feeling of like when all the colors match, you know you're doing a good job.
Yes.
Right. You know you've got a good like match of subgenres.
Because like you say, each subgenre has a little icon that is a certain color, right? So you've got a kind of orangey folk horror. And again, this matches the podcast anyway, right? So the art you designed me for the podcast on our website, it's like the folk horror series, everything had that kind of orangey tint and zombies were kind of green and radioactive. So it's kind of taking those ideas, right, for the subgenre icons. But then, you really cleverly weaved that into the picture itself. So the way in which you use those two colors in the illustrations, and that's it kind of you get at a glance exactly which category each character belongs in, or each item belongs in. And there's something incredibly satisfying, isn't there, just visually, when you have a matching set. It looks incredible.
It feels great. And the opposite is also true. Like if the subgenres don't match, there's a kind of clash, which isn't nice as well on the eye. Well, the other thing about the cards, which again we sort of like were in and out, was the flavor text. Like, should we add it in? Should we not add it in? And so we probably shouldn't talk too much about it, because it's one of the Easter eggs that I really like when people kind of finally notice it on the movie cards. Like every one of those has been thought through, and we did a lot of back and forth between the three of us of like, oh, should this item be in this subgenre or not?
That's basically been the one level of input I've had into this whole thing, is that I'm like, guys, we need to make sure that these things actually belong in these subgenres, right? And that actually was quite difficult with some of them, wasn't it? I think.
And that at that point it was like, what is occult and space? And you're like, you gotta think about the things that are crossing over.
Because there is so much crossover. You're right. And I was like, well, let's just not have something that it belongs in occult and space. And Alex was like, no, the point is the maths
you'll break the game.
Have it.
Yes. Respect the maths.
Oh yeah, that's right. And so I think like you said, Mike, it's that idea of the game. It seems quite simple, but actually it's just like, it's been eye-opening for me just how much thought goes into a game even as simple as this, right, in terms of the maths and
there's an engine. Like what you don't see in a game is the engine that's powering the gameplay. Like it's got to be working in the background. You've got to try not to notice it as much as possible,
right? And it's exactly the same as with the illustrations actually as well, isn't it, Mike? Because I think there's a balance that you needed to get of sort of creativity with functionality, I suppose, right? Because each card, and this is a lot that we had to talk about as a three, right? That each card has to have a certain icon on it. It has to have it. You want that incredible burst of color and that character in the middle, but it also needs to have what subgenre does it belong to? Is it a killer or an item or a victim? Does it have flavor text? And where do you position all that, right? And that was quite a lot to think about, wasn't it, for that?
I really enjoyed that process, actually.
Oh, good, because I thought I was annoying you the whole time.
Well, do you know, obviously, as an avid gamer myself, I see a lot of like game art, and I'd like to think that I could do a pretty okay job.
Yeah.
And so, I just, got to put my money where my mouth is, basically, and just figure it out. And the thing is that it was so well thought out, and it was the hierarchy of the iconography was really easy to sort, which was great. And I was really glad that we kept the flavor text as well, because I thought that I don't know, I just like it. I just like it. It's like a fun little extra to have. And I promised. I basically said to myself, like, Mike, don't get ahead of yourself. Don't do any art. Don't start running, before you can walk. And I just really wanted to make sure that we were all really happy with the mechanics. Like, did it all read well? And like, I was figuring out, oh gosh, what do we do? Like, when people fan them out and stuff, what's the priority? What's the priority?
Do you remember that day we were like, what if they're left-handed?
Yeah, all of that is the sort of thing that
tricky.
you just don't think about from day to day when it comes to this kind of thing, right? And were there any particular elements, like what were some of the subgenres and icons that you found the most kind of challenging, Mike? Was it
body horror?
Yeah, body horror. I don't know why that one, because in a way you'd think to yourself that one's kind of simple, because I just thought, oh, a body part. But it was weirdly quite difficult for us all to come up with something that worked, wasn't it?
Like with all of the other icons, I had like a lot of experience working, doing sort of like branding and motion graphics videos, and I'm quite used to using lots of little kind of like quite clear, clean icons. And for things like the alien subgenre, that's fine. Alien head, very obvious. Slasher. Slasher was a little bit tricky. I wasn't sure what kind of weapon to use.
Instrument.
And so, yeah, a lot of them were actually very clear. I think probably Home Invasion was probably the easiest.
Little house.
A house.
Yeah.
But body horror. What did I do first for body horror? I think it was like an eye.
It was an eyeball.
Eyeball. But then it was just like, what's that, like a wheel?
Yeah.
What's that? When it's really, really small,
Well,
it just has to be super clear. And with body horror, it's like mess.
Yes.
You know?
Goo.
Yeah. How do you... And gosh, we went through so many different iterations.
We
But
did.
I think teeth and a little blood splatters.
I think the
that
tooth
worked
is
well.
perfect because the tooth shape is very recognisable and it's very like solid, right, as well.
Yeah.
Because I think we had a broken arm maybe at one point as well. And
Yes.
it's been really interesting test playing it with other people because I feel like we've test played it with friends of the pod,
Yeah.
right? We sat in a bar. I think people tend to get the game immediately. But it's been interesting flagging the things that people don't quite grasp, and
Yeah.
so that's been really kind of fun, hasn't it? That process of kind of test playing it and see what works and what
And
doesn't.
it's really great to play it with like other gamers like ourselves, but also non-gamers.
Yes.
And, like that's because we want to get the husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends involved as well. You know,
Yes.
like so. I think. Yeah, we took this. I think it was the second prototype that we ended up taking out, and also like I designed the game, and then I was like, I don't really know like how many people can play it at once. So please, can we try and play it with as many people as possible until it breaks? We think we
Yes.
can get to 6. Like we've played some good 6-player games.
Yes.
Maybe you could play it 7. Maybe you could buy 2 decks, and then you could play it. So who knows? You know, you could play it more. But yeah, that was all fun figuring it out, and then weirdly, I feel like I was being led by the game itself. It's almost like, how does it want to be played?
Yeah, I love that. And have you got in your head an idea of could this be played as a solo game?
So I would be lying if I said I hadn't thought about how to play solo. I play a lot of games solo.
Yeah.
And also expansions in the future, you know, potential. There's other horror tropes and areas of horror movies that we haven't yet explored that I think could be really interesting.
And we're matching it with the subgenres from the podcast, right? So we've got up to 9 so far, and we've done 9 seasons of the podcast. So hopefully we can keep expanding with new subgenres.
Yeah.
There's lots of monster type things we haven't added yet.
Yeah, we could add different gameplay. There's all sorts of things. You know, at the moment you've got a victim and a killer, but you don't have any heroes in this game yet. So
you don't have a Van Helsing or a Dr. Loomis type character, right?
No final girls
or an Ellen Ripley.
So
absolutely.
I think that's something I'm interested in thinking about as well.
And I also love one of my favorite elements of this, because it's a very vain thing to say, is the fact that we 3 are on cards as well. Mike, how fun was that getting to put the 3 of us on these cards?
Well, I worried that I hadn't done you guys justice. There's always a bit anxiety-inducing. Like, oh yeah, could you draw me? Oh, all right.
Oh God.
I don't mind making myself look goofy, but no, you guys sort of, I thought we did a pretty decent job, and it was just obviously loads of fun just to like insert us. I love inserting myself and stuff anyway.
So good, right? So good. Alex, were you happy with your research scientist character?
Yes. For those of you that don't know, I did there was in a parallel universe, I could have been a research scientist. I did a chemistry degree. That was where I was, in a lab coat.
Incredible.
You got my bow tie in there. I really appreciated that. And also I think like as a kind of nerdy person researching and doing all the maths behind the game, it felt very appropriate.
I love it, yeah, and I'm a big fan of my insane podcast host. Incredible stuff. And tell us a bit about the box design, Mike, as well, because again, I think this is beautiful. It's just like a lovely little montage of all the different elements of the game, essentially, right?
I mean, I sort of tend to, because I've done a lot of movie poster design and comics, and I've done comic covers. I had initially wanted to kind of make a scene. I just couldn't make it work. And I know that I think we talked a little bit about maybe one of the kind of storylines about what the game is about is like a sort of a demonic, I don't know, director or a producer forcing someone to make a game to live. And I thought about, what that could look like as a sort of a movie poster, but I just couldn't make it work on a small box. And this design was the last, like a sort of like, I think I'd sort of given myself a deadline. Like, I'm going to send the guys the next round of concepts. I'm not really that thrilled with any of them. Something about them just isn't working. And this was like a bit of a Hail Mary, final girl desperate moment at the end, and I was just so happy with how that came out. Like immediately in like the rough, it just seemed to work way better, and you guys just went for it straight away.
I don't think we've ever told you, like, so what would happen is when you send your proofs through, Mike and I would go on a side
We'd
chat.
have a private chat. Like, what do you really think of Mike's work?
And so we'd send it through, but like literally every single time, I don't think there was a single time where we didn't automatically, immediately agree on exactly the same thing that you sent.
Yes, whenever you sent us options.
Every letter, everything was like, oh, it's definitely C.
Yeah,
you know,
it's option A and option C, right?
Yeah.
We're like, those are amazing. Yeah,
Obviously
perfect.
those,
You know,
we just so every time I come through, I'd be like, why if Mike and I don't agree? And then we always did.
And I think we all kind of I certainly had in my mind that like it would look a bit like this. Like we've all played and own card games that have a nice like box like this, right? And it's like nice and simple. But there's also something quite premium and special feeling about it, right?
Yeah.
It's not just your classic little pack of cards in a tuck
exactly,
box, you know?
exactly. And it just how could you not want to pick it up and look at it and play with it when it looks like that?
But I'm also obsessed with this. This is my absolute favourite thing because we're also offering a deluxe sort of limited edition of this game with a VHS kind of artwork cover. Mike, this is just a thing of beauty.
When I first started working on the cards, I wanted to add grunge textures and things like that on it, but actually because of the clarity so important, I decided to lose it. So it was quite nice getting all the grunge textures out and just making everything look like an old beat up VHS.
Oh my God, it's so good. And we're also including in that set some copies of your original kind of concepts and sketches, as well. How was that kind of looking back on those kind of original illustrations compared to kind of what we've ended up with?
Oh, well, I really started, I mean, even though I've been working in creative industry for a long time, I only started using a sketchbook in earnest about like 2 years ago. And all of the illustrations are like maybe 1 or 2 degrees away from those original sketches. And I just, because of the sheer amount of artwork there was to do, I really just gave myself an opportunity or like permission just to do as much of the design by hand in a sketchbook as possible. And what was really good about that process is like I just went for it, and then by and large you guys are pretty happy with everything I sent. There are, just in terms of like wanting to kind of like get a balance right, especially with like representation as
we
well.
talked about that. That was a super fun process, right? And it's like I know all three of us are really passionate about like how diverse and amazing the horror community is, and we all wanted to make sure that people were represented and reflected in all those cards. And obviously, we didn't want to do like United Colours of Benetton tick box either, but it was an opportunity for us to kind of subvert some tropes and move some stuff around. And I love some of the things you came up with where, the first instinct is this, and then we'd say like, okay, but what if it wasn't?
No, totally.
And actually, I've got to give credit to some of our partners and friends that played it too. I think sometimes having that outside perspective helped. And I remember playing it with my wife, Rihanna, and there was a time when she was like, so why does the documentary maker have to be a man or whatever?
Yeah,
like,
no,
good point.
Good
point.
Absolutely,
Like, we'd all message each other and be like, and I think so. That's been really good to keep in our heads throughout, hasn't it? And that's been actually really fun, like a really fun way of kind of making those characters just look a bit more, just interesting.
Yeah, totally,
absolutely. Yeah,
you can't help but give them backstories when you see them. There's so much action and there's so much character in all of them.
Yes,
every time, and then once you've laid the movie out, like. In the rules, it says like if there's a draw, you have to pitch a movie, and then whoever feels like they would survive their own movie is the winner, right?
Yes.
And so, but there's almost like another game of like once you've got a movie, like describe it, and then you could all vote like a kind of Cards Against Humanity vibe of like who's got the best movie.
And I want to ask you to put you all on the spot. What is your favourite of all of those cards? Like, Mike, do you have a favourite out of the ones you've designed? Favourite character?
I really like it's funny that you mentioned the idea of wanting sort of hero cards in the future, because one of my favourite cards that I designed was one of the victim cards, and that is the Grizzled Veteran, who is this kind of mix between Sarah Connor and like Snake Plissken from Escape from New York. And I think
she gives me kind of big Furiosa vibes.
Yes, absolutely. And that was just she was just like a really cool character to draw, because I've just I think think maybe I'd drawn a lot of people just kind of going,
Yeah.
It was nice just to draw someone like shotgun and just feel like there was a bit of agency in the game again. And then also I really like the design for one of the wild cards, because I think it's actually probably it's like just straight out of the gate actually a scary looking card, and it's the apparition card. I was really pleased with that one. That just sort of came together quite nicely. So those are two of my faves.
And actually we should say, like, we didn't really mention, but the decision to make the wild cards black and white, I think, has really helped. When you've got them fanned out in your hand it
helps with the kind of clarity of like which cards you're dealing with, because do you know, I just started designing them just in black. I designed all of them in black and white initially. But then with the wild cards, after I coloured in all the movie cards, I just thought, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that looks quite good.
Yeah. Alex, got a fave?
Well, I was going to say the Grizzled Veteran. I do actually like the... I think it's the university professor who's had some kind of Lovecraftian mishap, and she's got like one tentacle. I just love that kind of transition, and just the way she's sort of staring at it, like, oh my god, what's happening? I really like that card. And like you say, I think is it the plot twist where there's the dog by the side of the couch? I love that little guy.
I'm always inserting dogs into projects.
Yes. I love all the monstery ones. I think I love the actually I love the masked madman. It's kind of simple, but I love his little face, his little smiling face. It's great. Alex, how does it feel to have gone from like this stage, right?
Yeah,
to now this.
It's nuts. It's really nuts to me. Like, I actually got really emotional when this arrived in the post, and I got to open it, and like I compared it to this, because it's been evenings and weekends, and finding something that you're really passionate about and like willing it into existence. But I never would have been able to do that without like you two, right? And I think like the best thing for me about this is the story of our partnership, right, in making it all work together. And I feel like we worked so well together, even when we were disagreeing on things. Like, we were actively disagreeing and like trying to find solutions. And it just felt like it was a good vibe, and it made all of the effort and energy and the thinking and like the scratching of the head and the spreadsheets and all of that stuff.
I've never seen so many email spreadsheets, Google Docs as there have been for this, right? But yeah, agreed. It's actually been like almost unbelievably easy, actually, in terms of the three of us and the roles we all fell into and how it's all worked right from the beginning. Yeah,
I think it really represents the best of like a kind of a creative output, because obviously, well, I made a game with you guys that I just wanted to make.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think we all just really enjoyed trying to sculpt and figure this thing out to be something that we thought was really good. And I think, I suppose we could have thought about, the audience as well, which obviously we did. But ultimately, I think because we're all massive horror fans and, board game fans as well, we just wanted to make something that I think we could all be really proud of. Yeah. And I'm incredibly proud of this.
Oh.
Yeah.
So if you want to get your hands on one of these beautiful, and honestly, it is absolutely beautiful. If you want to get your hands on one of these games, please do support us. Support our Kickstarter, because hopefully we've put quite a lot of time and effort into this.
Fully independent, right?
Fully independent.
We've got no big money, no publishers.
This right
involved.
Here is the entire operation. Yeah. We've done everything just between the three of us. And I think it is something really special. It's something fun and easy to play with anyone. You don't have to be a horror fan. You don't have to be a hardcore gamer either. Like, it's not like a really intense kind of set aside 10 hours to play it kind of a game, right? You can play it on the train for 20 minutes.
And you can get like 75 amazing Mike Lee Graham illustrations in your own home.
Oh, no AI art.
Amen to that.
There was no AI involved. Oh, do you know what?
Robots.
We should have created an AI character one day.
There's an expansion.
Yeah, exactly.
That's who the solo mode can be against. You can fight against AI.
Against the AI monster.
There we go.
There we go. So yeah, if you want to get your hands on one of these beautiful sets, then please do support us on Kickstarter. Thank you so much.